Ali Brown, the hero of this channel, the graphics engineering whiz, the holder of all of our dreams. He's going to fix performance for everything. Maybe not quite, but he is amazing, and he's done an hour-long Star Citizen Live answering questions from the backers. And in this video, I've gone through and I've picked out the most important bits, the bits where the stuff that's relevant to this channel, the performance stuff, talking about favourite topic, Gen 12 renderer and Vulkan. We've got some graphics memory questions, we've got some DLSS, FSR, all sorts of bits, and some real gold in there. So we're going to go through, play some of the clips, talk about a few bits and bobs. Let's get into it. First up, he's been asked, give us a progress update on Vulkan and Gen 12 renderer.
Yeah, Vulkan is obviously going to be the back end of our new renderer, which we've called Gen 12. And the Vulkan side of it is going pretty well, but ultimately it's limited by our progress on the Gen 12 renderer. Until that's complete, Vulkan can't be complete. So at the moment, as we've been developing on the Gen 12 renderer, Vulkan's always been playing catch up, basically. Just as soon as something works in the new renderer, we look at Vulkan, make sure it works, and then bring it back up to speed. So it just lags ever so slightly behind. So in terms of like features for the Vulkan renderer, we're probably about 75%, something like that, of that being completed, but probably slightly less when you start factoring in performance, because Vulkan will perform slightly differently to DirectX we were using in the past. Probably a naive type of first version we run internally might not be quite as fast, but obviously we don't want to ship that to you. We want to ship the faster version. So probably, somewhere between 60%, 75%, depending on how much performance work there is. Like I say, it's playing catch up to Gen 12, and Gen 12 is progressing very well now. And once we it's not far off, and once we finish the Gen 12 aspect, we'll throw a bunch of bodies on the Vulkan side, and that will, I think, very quickly come up. So we're not expecting a big difference between Gen 12 release and then the Vulkan release very soon after.
Good news, 60 to 75% done. That obviously in itself doesn't give you any sort of estimate of when it will be done. We don't know exactly when they started or how long it will take to do that last percentage, but they seem to be on track, and my hope still is that it will actually be this year. That's my hope, but yeah, we'll have to see about that. So next up, he's been asked, will people see improvements as they continue to implement the Gen 12 renderer? So will somebody with lots of cores that don't clock very quick, will they see improvements as we go?
Yeah, each stage will get improvements in that regard for the people that have high core counts, low clock speed. Many parts of the render are already multi-threaded, and basically the Gen 12 work is moving more and more to them multi-threaded stages, and less work ends up having to be done on the single core, what this person's correctly called our render thread, which will always remain running on a single core. But in the final version of Vulkan, it will do almost no work, so everything else will be parallelized. But yeah, it will be every single milestone will give benefits. So every release we expect from now till the job's 100% finished, you'll get an improvement.
So this is one of the big hopes with the Gen 12 and Vulkan implementation, is that people who've got cores sitting around not doing much with their CPU, that they'll be able to be much better utilised. So the hope is that if you've got lots of cores, even if they don't clock that quick, they can all be used and therefore speed up the time that it takes to get the frame out to your monitor. So this is good news. This is kind of what we expected. We know that this is what they're trying to work on, but it's good to hear him say we will hopefully see performance benefits as they implement Gen 12 before the full Vulkan implementation is in. So the next question, will the game always be quite heavy on the CPU even when they've done this Gen 12 and Vulkan work?
The goal of Gen 12 is to remove a large chunk of the CPU work, so that will naturally mean it's more GPU bound. But even if there was no CPU cost from the graphics team, from my department, the rest of the game is still big and complicated. It's a very ambitious game, so there's lots of work by all the other teams to reduce the CPU load. And yeah, I mean, the engine team and the game team, it's an ongoing thing. That it's constant work to improve the performance. Massive strides have been made, but at the same time, the game's growing. So you see, what might be minor improvemements, but actually, if we hadn't been adding features, you would have been probably getting a much faster frame rate. But the game has to be completed. So yeah, I'd imagine there will always a relatively intense CPU work on this game compared to a much more simple platform or something. But yeah, we want to move into the position where we're GPU bound from our team. That's what we want, and then we're type of the limiting factor, and then we can, we can push the GPU effects harder then for the people that have GPUs that can handle it, and then we can scale it back and give people a good frame rate that don't have such powerful GPUs. So yeah, I think so. I think we will move to be more GPU intensive, but we have to be realistic that it's a complicated game. They'll always have a decent amount of CPU load.
All good stuff. kind of what we expected. It's going to be a pretty full-on game, whatever spec you've got. Always, it's a crazy sized game. The universe is massive. Lots of stuff they're pushing. It's always going to be quite demanding. The new Crisis, as I put in a video not too long ago. So next up, can they keep up to date with new engines like Unreal 5? Can they keep on the cutting edge? Are they worried about engine limitations?
I'm not particularly worried as long as we continue to develop our engine, as long as we continue to maintain and grow a graphics team and keep up with the latest technology. Yeah, we will be there. It just doesn't mean that the day after Unreal implement Nanite, we're going to implement Nanite. And there is sometimes, obviously, when the latest thing comes out, there is always this, and we're not talking about Nanite here specifically, just in general, but the assumption that that solves all of life's problems, and then you wait 6 months or a year and you find out that it solves a subset of problems. It's not, it's not the solution to everything. There is many aspects to a full package, a full engine like we've got all Unreal.
So as long as we continue to maintain the engine and grow the graphics team and everything, we should have no issue keeping up with the cutting edge.
I think so, yeah. I mean, our visuals are still cutting edge now. There's areas of the engine that we are extremely proud of that will match or surpass other engines, and there's areas that are not as good that we need to improve. So I don't see a major issue there. And for example, they picked Unreal, so I'll talk about that. But the Nanite tech, which improves the type of quality of geometry, that's super powerful in some areas. It's a benefit everywhere, but the main thing is type of natural geometry. So for planets and things like this, that could be a great benefit, but it doesn't do as much for some other types of geometry, internal spaces. And I think our quality on our type of interiors has been extremely high for a number of years and matches any other game I see. So, it's not that we don't want much better, natural geometry, but yeah, we'll get there. But I'm not worried. Yeah, as long as we, maintain the development, maintain the team, as long as we don't get fired tomorrow, we're all good.
No concerns from their side on the engine. All the people out there who are thinking, oh, I should switch engine, you've misunderstood how this works and how much work they've done to the CryEngine / Lumberyard to turn it into this star engine that they've got. It is massively customized version of Lumberyard at this point, and the work that it would take for them to then move across to Unreal 5 and restart that work again. If you actually ever want this game to be released, you don't want that to happen, because the game will definitely never release if they now at this point swap engine. Next up, a quick talk about GPU memory and minimum requirements, all sorts of stuff. Very interesting stuff. Let's get into it.
We've had to be quite careful in the past with the amount of video memory used. We have, backers that are backed early on that don't have quite so powerful GPUs, so they don't hold us back. We just try and make sure that we don't rule them out of the game. So we've been quite smart in how we've used the memory, and we make sure that they're still able to run the game. Obviously, the performance will be not as good on their machines. So yeah, I think with 3 to 4 gigs, you can run the game quite comfortably and get decent visuals. And I think type of the 4 gig region will stay running the game quite nicely for quite some time. I don't think there's a technology reason why the minimum needs to increase, but what will happen is we have all these different pools of memory, how much used for textures, how much used for geometry, and so on. And the type of the core amount of memory you need to run everything without textures and without meshes is increasing over time. And eventually, out of your 4 gigs, if we end up with 3 gigs to do the bare basics, then your 1 gig left won't give you a lot of textures and a lot of geometry. You'll still be able to run the game, but eventually, yeah, you'll start getting diminishing returns eventually. And there's elements of that already, like when we added planets and gas clouds, these things all took up memory. So I think gas clouds, our budget is like 300 megs, 400 megs or something. So that has to come from somewhere, and if your machine doesn't have it, you're getting less of something to pay for that. Now, one thing we are going to do is with Gen 12, as a necessity of the way Vulkan works, the memory management is much more explicit. Basically, rather than DirectX or NVIDIA or Intel managing the memory for you, it's left largely to yourself as a developer. But as a result of that, we are much more strict with how we use the memory. And what we're going to do is what a few other games have done, is type of expose that to you in the advanced graphics options, so you can see exactly what memory you're using and type of balance that as you see fit. So if you want more texture memory and then you will sacrifice something else, then that's your choice. And you can type of see how we're adapting rather than it being hidden from you, which it slightly is at the moment. And the other thing that a lot of people maybe don't realize is resolution you run the game has a huge impact on the amount of memory. So when I'm saying like 4 gigs is okay, if you're trying to run the game, 8K or 4K widescreen or something, you are taking a huge amount of memory for the bare bones, just getting the screen rendered without any geometry or textures in there. So you leave very little room for them. So if we expose it to you and show it to you, it'll be much more clear, and people that don't have as much memory will be able to make a smarter decision on how they want to use it, if they're interested. Obviously, we'll have automatic settings, do our best job. But yeah, should you want to delve into that. So to answer the question, yes, VRAM usage will steadily increase, but I don't think our minimum will increase for a while. I think it will be quite stable for quite some time, especially at the 4 gig region is going to be okay. But yeah, we definitely want to be able to push to the 8, and more eventually, as and we need to, because for example, the consoles have more memory than 4 gigabytes significantly, and we need to be beating them. So yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. This 4 gigs as a minimum that will last for a while. In the testing that I've done before, found that the game can, at about 1440p, use up to about 6 gigs, but it will run very comfortably at 4 gigs. But what's surprising here is just the idea that they're going to continue to target 4 gigs for the foreseeable future. So really, that's quite good news for a lot of people, because obviously at the moment the GPU market is a complete mess, and actually buying a top-end GPU is probably not the best idea at this point. So getting something from a few generations ago, or bit lower GPU memory, won't be an issue for Star Citizen. And obviously at the top end, you've got Nvidia releasing a 12 gigabyte version of the 3080 to kind of combat AMD offering 16 gigabytes on their top end of cards. But really for Star Citizen, that's not really that relevant at this point, it seems. So yeah, really interesting. Next up, a bit of a chat about FSR and DLSS.
Yeah, I mean, those two technologies, they obviously aim to do a similar goal, but in the way they're implemented, they're completely different. And they have quite different performance, different quality, and different suitability to the engine and the problem you're trying to solve. And also how easy they are to integrate is quite different. They fit into different type of areas of the pipeline, and we have both of these techniques introduce a few complications for the engine, because particularly with the UI, because most games, there's my game world, upscale it, slap my UI on my 2D UI, and it says, how many bullets you've got or whatever, and you're going, and then job done. That's type of the frame. But our UI is largely in the world, and also we don't have one type of UI. We have so many types of UI. We have, the options menu, but then other than that, we have like mobiGlass, which is almost like a traditional UI, but it's not. It's still in the world. You can still see behind you, people running up to you while using it. We have the holographic ship UI. We have the MFDs. We have a type of I can't remember all the different names you have them, but like things that are in the world, type of inner fort they call it. When you're going to talk to someone and it comes up with the options. There are so many different types of UI, and none of these play nicely with DLSS or FSR. So there's some work for us to figure out there. But yeah, as they mentioned, the market share isn't equal. One is currently stored in every GPU if they can afford a performance, and the other is on a much smaller percentage. I think 30%-ish might be type of the region you'd be looking at for DLSS at the moment. So yeah, for me, it's not really a question of A versus B. They're type of going to be considered independently on their own merits. Can we implement one? How long will it take? How do we implement it? DLSS has a distinct advantage in the way that it's currently set out, in that it is using more information goes into it, so it has a better chance of giving a good result. FSR is intentionally takes less information in, so there's a limitation to what it can actually achieve. So there is a fundamental limitation there. Now, either of them could change tomorrow. These are two independent companies make their own decisions on how this technology works. But yeah, at the moment, it's more, the upper limit is higher for DLSS because of the inputs they take in.
So really on that one, no commitment to either go for DLSS or FSR. They're going to just independently evaluate them, because they are quite different technologies. And as he said there, DLSS is quite different technology. It uses actual hardware on the RTX cards from Nvidia, and it does more, and so therefore the potential for performance improvements is better, and quality potentially is better. But obviously FSR is available on everything. And on this channel, we've tested out FSR and NOS, which is Nvidia's version of FSR, and you can get better performance. So I'm sure it'll be useful, but as he said there, the UI is an issue. In most games, you basically, when FSR is natively implemented into the game, the developers will just take the rest of the game world and upscale it, but then they'll hold back the UI or the elements that right at the side of the screen, the things that you want to be able to see, and they'll run them at full resolution. So that gives the best results, but as he said, in Star Citizen, that's not necessarily going to be that straightforward or possible. So I don't necessarily think we'll see either DLSS or FSR for quite a while, but it'll be interesting to see where they go and what direction they take. So the last thing we'll look at, Ali Brown has basically been asked, what is the thing that you're most excited about or what you want to see most? And he's basically said, I want to get to 60 FPS. I want to hit that goal and be able to hit that solidly. And so then Jared's followed up by asking, how do we do that? How do we get to 60 FPS?
So for me, it's three things. It's Gen 12 first. Once we finish Gen 12, which is our CPU optimizations, we shift our focus to GPU optimizations and the graphic settings to give people control over how their GPU is being used. And then after that, the one part that I have no control over is just the rest of the engine, the game code, which we talked about earlier when we talked about CNFL, the particularly challenge areas of the game where we get a ton of players or a city and whatever else on screen, or things like expo halls sometimes can be challenging. Like this is where where the other rest of the company will have to take their, or they are taking their part of the problem on. But yeah, for our side, definitely just Gen 12, and then after that, immediately after that, we'll hope to look at the GPU side of it to give you some more flexibility there. Yeah.
Networking.
I mean, I really want to see 60 FPS after this, especially there will be situations that, like I said, would be more troubling but difficult. But I'm hoping a lot of the game, for most people, that's the target.
That last bit there fills me with a degree of hope. He's hoping, and the target is to get most of the game at 60 FPS for most people. And as we know, at the moment, that isn't possible by a long stretch. You really have to have quite a high-end CPU to get anywhere near at 60 FPS, and especially in places like the cities. What he's saying there is that maybe places like the cities and other really high, really demanding places will be a longer term project in terms of the other parts of the game that need to be fixed, the engine stuff, as the game has to run through so many CPU things, so many bits of jobs. It really is quite a massive game. And so he's basically saying the graphics team are going to do their part with the Gen 12 and Vulkan work, but then the rest of the company has to also do their part. So yeah, I'm hopeful. That sounds good, and really I just can't wait for Gen 12 and Vulkan to really be implemented and we start testing it. We can start turning up versus DX11 and then swap across to Vulkan and test them side by side. It should be very exciting, and hopefully, as we say, it will be this year. If you like this more technical look at Star Citizen, please subscribe, like this video as well. You can come and join the Discord where we talk about all this sort of stuff as well. And then you've also got the option now to become a channel member, which is YouTube's alternative to Patreon. So you can come and support in that way. That's enough for this one. I'll see you soon. Bye.